Here we go. Good evening to all of you out there. Thank you for attending tonight's council meeting. And before we begin our meeting this evening, I've asked Mary Snyder from the Sacred Heart of Mary Church to lead us in this evening's prayer. Mary?
Yes. Good evening. Heavenly Father, we pray. Please watch over and guide our meeting this evening. Please protect and bring truth, peace, and unity to our nation, our city, and our citizens. Every day, may every one of us treat each other with respect and brotherly love as ordained by our Lord. And may God bless us, protect us from all evil, and bring us to everlasting life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Have
you.
a good meeting.
All right. Council will now come to order and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
United States of
to
America,
the republic
and to
for
the
which it
republic
stands,
for which it
nation,
stands,
under God,
nation,
indivisible,
under God,
with liberty and
indivisible,
justice
with
for all.
liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call.
Mr. Dressel?
Here.
Mrs. Hahn?
Here.
Mr. Paul?
Here.
Mr. Petrella?
Here.
Mr. Timmons?
Here.
Mr. Villamagna?
Here.
Mrs. Onyabuile?
Present.
All members of council are present and accounted for.
Recording has started. This meeting is now being recorded. You will now rejoin the meeting.
Before we move further
Hello?
on in our meeting, most of you are aware that we had a passing of Garfield Hayden off of the Parks and Recreation Board. And I think it's appropriate before we continue on that we have a moment of silence for Mr. Hayden. So, thank you. We'll call on to, Garfield Hayden's service will be this Friday at the Calvary Pentecost Church on 5th Street. The viewing is from 12 to 2 with the funeral starting at 2 o'clock. Thank you. I'm going to call on Mrs. Hahn now for the minutes.
Yes, I move that we approve the minutes of June 9, 2020 as written. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the minutes of June 9, 2020 be accepted by roll call.
Mr. Dressel?
Aye.
Mrs. Hahn?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Petrella?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
Aye.
Mrs. Onyabuile?
Yes.
So moved. Minutes of June 9, 2020 are accepted as written. We'll now move over to petitions and communications, Madam Clerk.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll now move on to ordinances and resolutions before City Council this evening. Starting off with ordinance number 2020-35 by the Finance Committee of Mr. Paul, Mr. Dressel, Mr. Timmons for its second reading.
Ordinance number 2020-35. An ordinance amending the existing table of organization, ordinance number 2019-96 as it relates to the water department only.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to ordinance number 2020-37 by the Finance Committee of Mr. Paul, Mr. Dressel, and Mr. Timmons for its first reading.
Ordinance number 2020-37. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2019-96, the existing table of organization of the City of Steubenville regarding the municipal court department only.
Okay, that concludes the ordinances and resolutions before City Council this evening. So we'll now move on to reports from our committees, starting off with Mr. Dressel.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dressel. Mrs. Hahn.
Thank you. We have several different things under Parks and Recreation. The MLK Center is not yet open. We are expecting it to open July 6th, but then it will only open for weightlifting. At this point, there's no indication from the governor's office that basketball can resume yet. So unfortunately, it will only be open for limited purpose of weightlifting as of July 6th. There will be no shelter rentals until there's a change in the number of people that can gather. At this point, Lori said the limit is still 10 people, so the Parks and Recreation Board recommends that we not extend any shelter rentals until the state of Ohio adjusts that number. The splash pad is going to be able to be open, but they tried to open it today and there was an issue. So they have to solve a problem before they can officially get it started. But she said they are intending to open the splash pad. Because of the limit of 10 people, we will not have a city event for the free fishing days this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, but the general public is welcome to fish at the marina on their own, not as a city activity. And both Saturday and Sunday in the state of Ohio, you are not required to have a fishing permit. So if it's something that you've thought about enjoying or sharing it with, maybe one of your children or nieces, nephews, friends, this might be a nice opportunity to invite someone to come with you to fish. And that's both Saturday and Sunday. There's a new memorial bench program, and I believe one of the first benches will be for Mr. Hayden. And so there's a cost of $1,500, and it's for 10 years. And then whoever had the bench initially dedicated could renew that, or someone else could take over sponsorship for someone else. But it will be $1,500 for 10 years. There are designated places in all of the various parks. So if you might be interested in having a bench in memory of someone, that's now going to be an option. And you can contact Lori through the Parks and Recreation directly about that. She's placed the order for mulch, but it has not arrived. So when we know when it's coming, if you're interested in volunteering, we're going to need a lot of hands to get it spread around, and we'll communicate that to people who have said they wanted to volunteer. And finally, coming Thursday, we will have two different meetings offered. Friends of the Marina will be meeting at Frelick's Restaurant at 4:30 in the basement. And then 7 o'clock that evening will be the Friends of Beatty Park meeting at the clubhouse. And people who are interested in both are welcome to come to both. And we'll hopefully get more information from Lori on both parks, specific to those parks where we are in the plans for the summer, what plans can be made. The last thing I had a question about, there was a new document from the Ohio Municipal League that said when the SB 310 was just recently passed, it was merged into another bill, and so I think the bill that it actually went under was 481, but their statement was that the legislature renewed funding for all of the capital projects and also all of the approved OPWC appropriations. And so I wanted to ask, is that the word that we've received, specifically Mike Dolak, And does that mean that we can now schedule the water line, which was put on hold because those two appropriations were put on hold?
I'm not sure, Ms. Hahn, I'll check with Mike. We were talking about that. I think it's been extended into 2021, but I'll get that verified for you and let you know tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So that's all I have to report on Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mrs. Hahn.
Mm-hmm.
And now call on Mr. Paul.
Good evening, Your Honor. I have, it's a resolution, council as a whole, and it's a resolution to apply for Administered CARES Act funds. And this is something that we would ask when the state, it's for any city under 500,000 people, which we certainly apply there. And it's money that will come to the county, and then we would be able to acquire money through the county. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paul.
Thank you.
The next would be Mr. Petrella.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to inquire, Costa, did you have any chance of looking at the ordinances pertaining to weeds and litter?
I did, Mr. Petrola. I'm sorry. I did, Mr. Petrola. So if we look at the ordinances that are on book, and our ordinance for high weeding gas is 521.10. So the ordinance as it's written, and we had talked about shortening the time which we give a person to cut the weeds. It's already at 5 days. I don't know if we could go any shorter. I don't think I just don't know if that's enough. I mean, could you go to 3? I guess, but I don't know if 3 is reasonable. But I know that was one issue, and that's 521.10. And I think it was my recollection is correct. It was the time issue between the time we issued the notice to the time they have to cut. Correct?
Well, that and these absentee landlords or people who are deceased, and because there's ball games being played at Murphysville, and those lots that are at the entrance of Murphysville from State and Cedar are so bad, it's ridiculous.
So, under the ordinance as it's written, I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I'm just looking at, the absentee landlords or people who are deceased. We need to do something with those lots.
So, the remedy under the statute is, again, if the owner of the property is a non-resident and his address isn't known, or if they're deceased, you still can use the notice procedure in the ordinance. It's just by certified mail. If you can't find an address, then we can put a notice in the paper. Again, they have to have 5 days, and after 5 days, we can go onto the property and cut it, and then we place a lien on the property by filing it with the county auditor. I mean, we can do all of that. Again, if it's an issue of time, I don't know. I think we have to give them some time. I mean, if we wanted to change that aspect of it to 3 days, I don't know if that's unreasonable because it's been vacant for so long, or because the landlord is absent and they're not attentive to it. That might be a reason to change it. But we have a mechanism in place. We just have to execute. And I would say this. I didn't realize this. Part of the issue that we're having is we lost some staffing, some labor force, if you will, from the municipal court services program. They cut a lot of vacant lots and high weeds for us. Granted, they can't do it now because of COVID, but I be mistaken on that, but I got to think the absence of that labor force is contributing to what you're seeing probably. I don't know where else to go with this, to be honest with you. The procedure's simple. It's a matter of execution.
Can I ask,
Craig, can I
go
answer?
ahead, Scott.
So, Acosta, as you may or may not know, over the past 4 or 5 years, we've given notice to all these people probably once. What in the ordinance says that notice expires so that we have to redo it every time?
I don't think there's any ordinance that addresses that, but if you kind of think about it logically, okay, so we give them notice to cut their grass. They cut it. The violation's cured. They let it go again, and it gets up to above our 6-inch. I think it's our. Actually, it's 12 inches or higher under the ordinance.
I don't mean those. I mean the ones that never do anything that we end up cutting. Is there some reason that we can't give notice that says when we cut it that we're going to continue cutting it every 2 or 3 months forever? Until something changes with the state.
That's a fair question because if they don't cut it, I have to think about that because my concern is this. So let's say we cut it. Let's say we give this absent person, landlord, be whoever, with the owner, we give them notice. The certified mail goes through. So they got notice. We wait our 5 days. We go on, cut it, lien it. The violation is now cured. So now it starts all over again because the violation is cured. However, that's at least something that I can explore. I got to watch the due process issue there, but I can kind of kick it around with Bernie and I. That's an idea. I like it because you're right. They're not doing anything, and they haven't done anything for years. But my issue is once that violation is cured, does it start the cycle over again? Does it start the due process over again? I got to think about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and maybe we should rewrite the ordinance.
Yes, correct.
Costa, to answer your question,
Definitely need to rewrite the ordinance.
that,
Okay, I can take a stab at it. Yeah.
And also, Costa, these are lots that are not on the tax rolls. We got liens against them. They're probably, a lot of these, especially on Lakeville, they're right next to nice homes. And I'm sure that somebody may want that lot for whatever, that's torture. Can't we get with the prosecuting attorney and see what we can do to dispose of this property, to put it back on the tax rolls?
Let's just do this then. Let's just get a plan together. And I think it's probably the easiest way to do it. If each of you in your ward, and we have to make sure that these are in some kind of tax foreclosure. If they are in a tax foreclosure, and I guess that's easy enough to check, but if you all get me addresses, names would be helpful too, but if you don't have the names, the addresses will do. And if you give me those lists, I'll compile a list. I will then forward that list with a letter to the prosecuting attorney to say, hey, please put these on the front burner. These are within the city, within a neighborhood. They are blighting the neighborhood. And a neighbor, like you said, may want to purchase them just to control their space and so they don't have to deal with this anymore. If you all want to do that, that's fine. We can put that together. Just send me, if you have a name, great. If you don't, send me the address. We'll make sure that it's in tax foreclosure.
The lots don't have addresses, so that's the point. That one on
Well, if
They're online.
and also,
they should be online.
and then also, Chris should have all that information already.
He might not have. I beg your pardon, Craig. I'm sorry.
I think Chris has that already. I think we asked for a couple of and he compiled it.
What I'll do then is I'll get with Chris tomorrow and ask him if he has a list. Are you referring to properties that are in tax foreclosure, or just that we have a lien against them? That's, obviously, those are two different things, for sure.
Well, I guess both, because we've torn down houses on these lots, and, you know, because we couldn't find the owners or anything. And, you know, we're never going to recoup the money. That's money gone. As far as I'm concerned, it's gone. I just want to put these properties back on the tax rolls, and if the neighbor wants to buy and maintain it, that's a plus for us. One, we don't have to maintain it, and two, there's a little bit of extra revenue coming in.
Sure. I can get with Chris to see what lists he has compiled, and then I will report back to you next Tuesday to get you a plan on those. And I'll start looking at rewriting that second portion of the high weed ordinance for absentee owners, if you will, see if that's even feasible. I have my concerns, but that's okay.
Whose committee does that fall on? Because whoever's committee that falls under, as soon as we get back in the council chambers, I'd like for that committee to meet so we can resolve this issue this year.
Let me figure out too. Well, we could do it that way too.
Craig, I think it's under planning, and definitely we can get a meeting together and try to get this resolved, because I think everybody agrees it's a major problem.
And I would say this too. I apologize, Mr. Golan. I didn't mean to interrupt you. This is kind of hard for me. I'm sorry. Mr. Petrella, I would say this, and I say this to all of council. If there are particular lots in your neighborhoods that are right in the middle of a residential section that are causing problems, I think we need to prioritize those. So, please email me those addresses and/or parcel numbers. Even a roundabout. Even if you don't have an address for it, just next to 424 Main Street, whatever it would be. We'll try to find it out. But if you want to prioritize things and prioritize those sales, those tax sales, if you will, just let me know, and we can rank those first. But I'll get with Mr. Petrozzi to determine what lists he has, and then report back on Tuesday.
Yeah, and we might be able, I'm sorry, this is Kimberly, we might be able to appeal to the health department as well, because in some of these instances, one of the homes on Oak Grove, the front door is broken down, so the house is wide open, and the neighbors have complained about animals going in and coming out, and then coming into their yard, and it does become a health issue. So it's not only unsightly, and it's a continual problem. I mean, some of these weeds are over 8 feet tall on 2 of the houses on Oak Grove. So it did not happen anytime recently. It's just been getting worse. But I think there's true health issues involved as well.
And one more thing I might bring up, under the ordinance that we have, 52110, they have to be at a height of 12 inches or higher. You might want to think about lowering it a little bit. I don't know if you need to. I don't know if you want to. But, it's a foot. So, I don't know. That's your call. But that just might be something you might want to look at when we meet in committee and go over that as well.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Petrella. I'll now call on Mr. Timmons.
Yes, I was going to talk about this under miscellaneous, but I might as well keep going about it. I don't want to sound redundant, but I did have a statement tonight about, this is the number one priority. You mentioned we have to get our priorities crossed. The grass is number one for me. Councilman Petrella already brought it up. I mean, I've had 2 phone calls, messages just today. Received 3 over the weekend. I understand there's challenges. Community service is a big help, but they're not in operation right now, and I think we owe it to the citizens. Craig, I wanted to let you know I did speak to a resident about 1200 Pennsylvania Avenue. I know that's your ward, but I told the citizen we need to tackle this as a team. I guess there's a TV that's been sitting in that yard for 2 years. Neighbors are actually trying to use their own bulk pickups to get rid of the garbage at that residence. I mean, that just, there's no excuse for that. And 2630 Hollywood, you know, I, like you said, Costa, I will go through my wards this weekend. I'll take pictures of each property. I'll deliver those to you Tuesday. But, I mean, like Bob also said, I think council pretty much is in agreement that this is a major issue, and, you know, we've dealt with more complex issues, and this is just something that we need to get taken care of. The ones Kimberly spoke about at Oak Grove, I've been up there. You know, I don't want to sound redundant, but I was frustrated. I'm frustrated about it, and you know, the people that actually live at these places, there's no excuse. But for the vacant homes, you know, we have to do something, and I'm open to any and all suggestions. I'll do whatever it takes. So I just wanted to say that. I don't have miscellaneous now, so I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timmons. We'll now call on Mr. Villamagna.
Yes, Mayor, nothing this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Villamagna. We'll now call on Mrs. Anya Weebley.
Yes, matter of fact, speaking of the weeds and the trash and the dilapidated homes, myself and some volunteers, we went on a couple of the streets, going just up the street, just talking to neighbors about keeping their properties clean. We got good responses, especially up on Roswell, where the majority of the street is clean. It's just a couple of houses up there that are really just tacky, and then it's the alleys in back of the houses. And I understand that there are people coming from other areas, including West Virginia, and dumping in our alleys. Like, I also noticed down the alley between 7th and 8th and Slack and Adams, if you guys can imagine that area down there. There's sofas and just debris and all kind of crap in back of these places, and you know, we want to try to get those cleaned up. Also, dilapidated houses, and yes, I am reiterating because I think we all are concerned of it, and really I'm tired of looking at it, especially in the South End. There's so many places where the weeds are growing up as tall as me. I'm 5 feet, and the weeds are at my nose, okay? There's a house down on the corner of Lincoln Avenue and Lincoln Boulevard. I think it's 341. And as I understand, the city actually took over ownership of this house. The hill in back of the house is pushing the house outward to where it's getting ready to lean into the house next to it. So I don't know, you know, what can be done, but the woman is trying to get her property taken care of, but you have a house that is actually like busting out and getting ready to hit her house. I went past there today and I saw where some of the things from the roof are actually falling into the sides of her house. So I also hope that, you know, we can address this issue also. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That concludes reports from our committees. We'll now move on to reports from our administrative officers, starting off with our city manager, Mr. Mavromatis.
Thank you, Mayor. What I'd like to do tonight, we have Judge Maschio came in under my time. I'd like to have him up first so we don't delay him anymore, and then I'll fill you in on some other things. Judge? Thank you. Sit right here.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, Your Honor, welcome to our meeting.
Yes, I appreciate it. Just real quick on this mental health court, I had sent everyone an email, and I appreciate Costa really getting to everything in a timely manner, and Dave Lewis had spent some time with me. Several of you had reached out to me, and I appreciate your support. I covered pretty much everything I want to do in terms of this program. The only other thing that I thought I should add, and I probably should have clarified for you, this is a program for non-violent criminal defendants charged with lower level misdemeanor violations, and it'll be those individuals whose mental illness was a factor that led to the conviction for the crime in which they were charged. So we're not going to have violent offenders in the program. Your eligibility will be determined based upon a risk assessment tool that our probation department utilizes, and based upon the results of that testing, that'll help us better determine who is and is not eligible for that program. Did any of you have any questions about anything on that? And if not, I'll move forward with the discussion of property maintenance. Hello?
No, yeah, if they don't answer.
Okay, so no questions. Now, with regard to property maintenance, we had to suspend our community service program due to the COVID pandemic mid-March 2020. We just resumed that program June 1st. Our numbers are increasing. We're getting more and more participants on a daily basis. I can tell you that I have been inquiring of the supervisors as to when we can resume cutting vacant lots throughout the city, and they're aware that that's a priority. We just don't quite have the numbers that we need to do it in a proper manner. But as soon as we get those numbers up, that is certainly something I intend to address. I do want to reiterate, though, and we have this discussion every year, it seems. Community service in and of itself is not the answer to the problems of vacant lots. It certainly can assist in this problem, but it's not the solution to this problem. You know, most of the individuals that participate in the community service program, the vast majority are working off unpaid fines and costs. They're poor people that, for whatever reason, their fines and costs were allowed to accumulate over the years. They don't have the ability to pay. And this provides a vehicle for them to work those monies off and get on with their lives. But they're not slave labor. And it's pretty disheartening to individuals when we drive them, say, to a lot or a house that's on, I don't know, Oak Grove, and the weeds to that home are sometimes 10, 12, 15 feet high in the air, and then we don't even give them the proper tools that they need to clear the lot. We give them a weed whacker. I mean, it's literally ridiculous what we expect these people to do with a weed whacker, and it is amazing the job that they do once they're at those properties. I cannot believe how much work they do with a weed whacker. But I've always said this. I think that we need a game plan. And I think that the best solution to this problem is to have the city work in conjunction with community service. The city has brush hogs at its disposal. I can't hand community service workers or allow them to operate a brush hog. They're going to lose limbs and everything else. But if the city would develop a plan where these properties are cleared by a brush hog, we then have community service come in and clean up, and then ultimately those properties are sprayed so that they do not continue to grow. I think that would solve a big part of the problem. Now, whoever's going to do the spraying would have to be certified, and there's some things that we have to do in that regard. But I really believe that that's the best way to tackle this problem. I mean, last year I think we cleared close to 200 lots, but I will tell you that many of those lots were lots that community service had to go back and repeatedly address because they were never sprayed. So we would end up clearing maybe a lot on Oak Grove 4 or 5 times during the course of a cutting season. Many of these properties are abandoned and the owners cannot be located. And Costa touched on something that I think is a very good idea, and that is when you send the mailings to the property owner, and those mailings come back unable to locate, unable to forward, I think we should compile a list of the city, not we, the city, I'm the court, the city should compile a list of those properties, and at some point run ads in the paper, service by publication. There's a statute that deals with how many times you have to run that ad. And once that ad is run, 5 days later, according to law, we can then go onto the property, we being community service, and clear that lot. I will tell you that the ordinance we have is modeled after the revised code. The state law says 5 days. A municipality cannot give notice less than 5 days. So 5 days is the minimum amount of time. Once a lot is cleared, it is clear that you have to give notice each and every time that you're going to go onto someone's property. So you're not going to be able to give a notice and say, we're going to continually come on your property in the event that your property's in violation of the city code. And I think that would be a good way to address some of these problems where we don't know where the owners are. There's also a provision, too, that says any expense incurred by the municipality in terms of cutting these grasses and weeds can be placed on the tax duplicate as a lien on the property. And you're allowed to do that twice a year under the Ohio Revised Code. And when the properties sell, you will recoup some of the money that you spent. I do think that that's worth pursuing. I will tell you further, Officer Dorsey is the code enforcement officer. He, in my opinion, does an excellent job for the city. He was not citing, I shouldn't say that. He was citing a lot of individuals into court for violations of high grass and weeds, but he was not able to make the referrals to community service because of the fact that the program was shut down. Now that has changed. I saw a lot of complaints on the clerk's desk that are being processed for high grass and weeds to those individuals that have ignored the orders. As you know, we have housing court once a month. Violations such as high grass, weeds, garbage, litter, we deal with those throughout the month. So I don't want you thinking that those are all being scheduled one time a month and I'm giving everyone 30 or 60 days to come into compliance. Most of the individuals that come in to the court and are found guilty of a property maintenance violation, say for instance for high grass and weeds, I will tell them, I'm giving you 7 days to cut the grass. And if you come back and everything's fully compliant, all or a portion of your fines will be suspended. And we have had huge success. I can tell you, I can't think of one individual that has appeared in court for high grass and weeds that hasn't cut their grass. And that's the whole goal of property maintenance, is bringing the property into compliance. The same can be said for garbage and litter. And what we do is we continually work with people to try to address these problems in a timely manner. Housing cases are a little trickier, and the reason for that is we try to put the onus on the homeowner to resolve the problem. But the problem often lies in the fact that many of the individuals that come into court are on very fixed and limited incomes. They might have less than $800 a month coming in by way of Social Security. And some of these expenses that are necessary to fix these homes are tens of thousands of dollars. To tear down the home is tens of thousands of dollars. And it's just money that they don't have. They don't have the ability to comply with the law. And in that situation, the court's mandated to find them not guilty. We do have laws on the books, however, that say if property is a public nuisance after sufficient notice, which I believe in this instance would be 30 days, that at that point the city can take action on its own, go onto the property, secure the structure, repair the structure, or demolish the structure. And then once again, any expense incurred can be placed as a lien on the taxes. Bear with me 1 second. I'm just kind of going through my notes here. That's my take on property maintenance. I will tell you further, if people don't come into compliance, when they do, at that point in time, we don't just say, okay, thank you, and no cost or fines. Those are people that we actually do impose fines. I can think of one case, this was probably about a year ago, where I had an individual who completely littered up their property, refused to clean the property. I found them guilty. I sentenced them to 3 days in jail. I let them out. I told them I was giving them 10 days to clean up the property, and I was bringing them back on day 11. And if they had not had the property cleaned, they were going to go back to jail for 3 days. And we were going to repeat that pattern until they either cleaned the property or I maxed them out at 30 days. They served the 3 days in jail and had the property completely cleaned by the next time that they came to court. So we are holding people accountable, and just unfortunately, a lot of these problems are not unique to Steubenville, and we've had an exodus from this town. People have literally just walked away from their properties. And you have to realize, too, this is a poor community. And many of the people that come before the court simply do not have the means or the ability to take care of these housing issues. But I do agree with one thing. Anyone can pick up their garbage. And I say it every day. Just because you're poor doesn't give you the right to have litter and things like that strewn throughout your property. And I don't know what to tell you other than we're doing the best we can. We have housing court. We actually have it tomorrow at 9 a.m. and it's always the third Wednesday of each month. You're more than welcome to attend. You're more than welcome to attend any session of municipal court, which is daily at 10 o'clock, and you can see how we do, in fact, deal with these violations. Now, based on that, do you have any questions?
Judge, I do have a comment.
Go ahead.
Some of the people use this as an excuse, but some of the way people just leave trash and garbage around their house. I've been in some of the houses as a mental health worker where it's even just as bad or worse, which is a reflection of some mental illnesses that are going around with some of the residents of the city. I don't know how that could be addressed, but that is a problem also.
Well, if it comes before the court, as I said, the whole goal of property maintenance is always compliance, and we do our best. To bring those owners into compliance. But I will tell you, as far as the garbage, the items on porches, things like that, you would be surprised, but the numbers are very high in terms of the number of individuals that resolve the problem and come into compliance. I see the biggest problem with housing, quite honestly. When it comes to grass, those individuals usually come into compliance as well, and when they don't, those are the folks that we end up sending community service up there to address. But I see the problem in terms of even high grass and weeds being with these abandoned properties. And that's where I come back to the fact that I think that if we could coordinate some sort of game plan between the city and community service, I think it would better address that. Now, that said, I realize that resources are not what they should be or could be, and it's not a perfect world.
Anyone else wishing to
So,
speak?
Mayor,
Yes.
Mayor, if I may just comment briefly, just kind of dovetailing on what Judge Massio said, and I appreciate all his efforts. He and I had a discussion regarding this, I think last year or year before. It always is it's a persistent problem, and it's with my other municipalities as well. If you recall, I think it was 2 meetings ago, Mr. Petrola had brought this up, and I had mentioned that we model ours off. I believed we modeled our high weed ordinance off the revised code, and we couldn't go before that. We couldn't go below that floor, if you will, that 5-day floor. And I didn't cross-reference that in preparing for tonight. I should have. But I concur with Judge Massio that if the revised code is 5 days notice, we can't go below the 5. We can always go above it, but we can't go below it. And I appreciate his guidance regarding the continuous violation, if you will, or the continuous notice, if you will, as it relates to absentee owners. So with that, I think he's correct. I think we have at least the beginnings of a plan regarding what we need to do. So with that guidance and conceptually how he's used the law, we'll try to work in conformance with those comments that he made in mind.
Yeah, a municipality can never be more stringent. A municipal code can never be more stringent than what the Ohio Revised Code permits. So in this case, if the revised code says 5-day notice, you can have an ordinance that goes 6, 7, or more, like Costa just said, but you can't have an ordinance that goes 4 and below.
And I concur with that.
That's just the law, guys.
Any other questions for Judge Massio?
Yeah, Mayor, I have just a comment for Judge Massio, please.
Yes.
Judge, this is Villa Magna. Can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Hello.
Judge, thank you for the job you're doing for trying to keep up on this. And I think you said a couple things that I've been saying all along. I mean, I know we got a problem here, but this is not the same town where I grew up at where there was 38,000 people. Now we have like 17. They left. The houses are still here, and it's an ongoing problem. We don't have them. We're tearing down houses. We tear down houses, and then next year we got 5 more on the list, and then we tear 3 down, and then we got 6 more on the list. But we got to try to come to some kind of grip with it. But appreciate the comments that you made tonight, spelling it out. I think you explained it a little bit better than we do, probably. But thank you, Judge.
I would tell you too. Like we've even worked with, for example, we've had Habitat for Humanity come, some organizations like that. Some of these stories are some of the people that come before you. It's very sad. They want to do the right thing. They're oftentimes elderly people on fixed incomes. As I said, they're in tears, and sometimes I feel more like a social worker than a judge, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for your support with our programs, as always.
Thank you, Judge Massio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Jeff, anytime. Thank you. All right, Mayor.
We'll move on now to our law director, Mr.
Whoa.
Yes.
I got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Back to our city manager.
All right. Where'd we go here? Mr. Dressel, your half of the lights have come in for the North 4th Street project, and as soon as we get the additional lights in, they're going to start that. But I wanted to let you know, half of the order was sent in. We're waiting for the other half. Mr. Timmons, on the graffiti you asked about, it's going to be subbed out to a company that does sandblasting, but they feel that they can blast it light enough that just takes the paint off where it doesn't have to be repainted. So that's in the process.
Thank you.
Mayor, your Grant Street lot will be cut tomorrow morning. Friday or Monday, then it will be sprayed. So that will keep that from growing back.
Thank you.
Mr. Petrola, your State Street address we talked about, those individuals are due in court on June the 23rd of this year. So we'll see what happens at that visit with Judge Massio. All right, this is a recommendation that I have the council, where we're at right now with this COVID-19. My recommendation is we stay closed until July, and our first meeting, we open up July 7th for court. If you want to continue with the direction we were going, these are the rules you'll have to comply by. 6 feet distancing, you must wear a mask, and it's just limited to our people here. We can bring in no more than 10 people as guests, but they will have to be masked. So I put this out to council. Weirton is opening up in July also, but again, my concern is with our council here and the safety. So what are your thoughts on this? The other thing is July 1st, that's when the order expires that the state had put out. It expires July 1st. So they're either going to renew it or they'll come out with a whole new order. So we'll have a better idea then.
So the question of,
July is fine if we're careful.
I think Mr. Dressel, we're safe going to that distance based on everything that's changing. There'll be another conference with the governor on Thursday. I'm going to make a call in tomorrow to the health department and try to get more definitive guidance so it keeps us safe here. I'm still going to have the place sprayed on Saturday, good cleaning there with antiseptic based on one of our vendors here. But again, my recommendation is we keep this till July 7th. We'll shoot for that date. We should also, hopefully it will not change, we'll be able to have our 4th of July celebration.
Jim?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with what Scott said. I'm fine with July. I think we got to be safe. We got to still not take it lightly. But if that's the recommendation, I'm okay with it. I know we all want to get back, but a couple of weeks ain't going to kill us. So
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
I agree to that.
Okay, I'm going to take this as council's in agreement with that. That'll be my plans to work towards that, to July 7th. I didn't bring this up, but we're still trying to get the separations for our separations for people that come in. Twice have canceled the order on us, so we're trying another vendor to get that. We are keeping our data up as people do have to come in, see our individuals here. They're logged in by sheet, and we keep a daily talk so we have a record of who's entered our building. So we will maintain that until the building officially opens up. Right now, the numbers for Jefferson County are at 71. We had a new case outside of Steubenville naturally, but again, we're up to 71, and we're being squeezed by the county north of us, Columbiana, and the county south of Belmont. And that's all I have to report, Your Honor.
okay, thank you, Mr. Mavromatis. I call on Mr. Mastros this evening.
One thing, Mayor, just to touch on what Mr. Mavromatis said in July, I confirm that as well through the State Board of Health. We're still at 10 people, and it could change after July 1. It could stay the same. Don't know yet. However, if it's still under the 10-person rule for private or public gathering, what we will have to do is just make sure that we provide the public with an avenue to participate if they sign up for public comment. And it'd be great if we could stream it still, but we have to provide them the ability to call in to address council under public comment. So we'll just, with those two caveats in mind, we should be okay, but hopefully they raise the limit a little bit so we can have some breathing room with the number of people in attendance. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mastros. We'll now move on to miscellaneous reports, and signing in this evening is Mrs. Hogg.
comment and then a question. So my comment is thank you, Jim, for getting that dumpster moved off of Pennsylvania. That had been there for months, and I really am grateful it's gone. So we'll deal with the weeds, but at least that big dumpster's out of the way, and I appreciate that very much. There was a notice from the Ohio Municipal League that referenced the governor having established in 2015 the Ohio Collaborative Community Police Advisory Board, and the comment by the Ohio Municipal League was that 79% of Ohio officer units have voluntarily complied or in the process of the certification. And I just wondered, is that something that our department has been engaged with? Is that familiar to you?
Chief?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, but
Is that something that our department
in our area,
looked at, or?
in our area, there are no police departments that I know of that participate in this. It's quite paperwork lengthy. I expressed my dissatisfaction with the way it was set up to the high chiefs of police. All of our policies are still in effect, and they are approved by the United States Department of Justice. If this cooperative wants to come in and look at them and say, yeah, they're good, that's fine. But I can't see doing a bunch of paperwork with people we don't have, because I just have one secretary. That, I mean, our policies are approved by the Department of Justice. You know,
Okay. And then he also mentioned, the governor mentioned that he's hoping to find some funding for law enforcement recruitment. And so I thought I would just put that on everyone's radar, because there may be some additional opportunities for grant funding that could help us as we, reach out to minorities and women to see if we can have an increase in our law enforcement in those areas.
Ms. Hahn, I wouldn't get too excited about that, to be truthful with you, because no, I'm being quite frank. They've cut all of our funding for training, and they shut down OPADA.
For training?
And we used to get reimbursed for training. Cities no longer get reimbursed for training, and they shut down OPADA. They let go of the whole staff. That place is a mess. It's under reconstruction, so I wouldn't expect much from the state. I hate to be blunt like that, but I have very little faith in them.
Okay.
And I'd like to add this in.
Well, you've had more, yeah.
So council is aware of this, only because of the background that I have, and I know clearly what can get us in trouble quicker than anybody. This department has had far more training that exceeds what APATA has asked for every year, and they have cut the funding. And it's through the funding that we've had out of our hide, through asset forfeiture, that we've been able to bring in a lot more training here that exceeds the APATA standards. And that's what I pay attention to. And our policies are solid. I've reviewed those, and again, justice has blessed off on them. Now, the one thing we got to be the watch for is what's going to happen when Congress comes out. The president's already started, and justice will be the one. Department of Justice will come out with who knows what requirements that they want in the future. But I will tell you, our record keeping is good, based on what the Department of Justice had told this department several years ago on what reporting we needed, and I pulled that already. So I would ask council, if any of you are interested in this, then you contact me. I'll be more than happy to brief you on that.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that it, Mrs. Hahn?
That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jim, I'd like to add something to you. I don't know if people are aware of this or not, but we have police officers on our police department who are actually qualified teachers, and they train other departments, members of our department, train other departments' personnel. cut back on paying for it, but it's still, our officers still attend, and I'm very proud that we have people who instruct other departments from our department. And I'm very proud of that fact, Chief McCafferty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it up, Bob. You're absolutely correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We move on to public forum, and we do not have anyone signing in this evening, so I'm going to call on Mr. Paul.
Yes, Your Honor. As for the business for this council, I'll make the motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that tonight's council meeting be adjourned by roll call.
Mr. Dressel?
Aye.
Mrs. Hahn?
Aye.
Mr. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Petrella?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
Mr. Villamagna?
Aye.
Mrs. Onyebuile?
Yes.
So moved. Council is adjourned.